Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins, and today I'm talking to author D.L. Havlin, an unretired business executive and world traveller who has been writing 20 plus years. He has won numerous literary awards and published thriller, historical, and mainstream literary novels. He grew up in Florida and considers its slash pines, palms, waters, and sands a blood relative. Many of his novels are set in Florida, are steeped in Florida history, and cover topics of interest to Florida residents and everyone else, of course. Hi, DL, welcome, and thank you for coming on Book Talk Radio Club.
Thank you.
Total Point is your current novel. Would you like to give Book Talk Radio Club's listeners a brief synopsis?
Sure. I like to be able to talk about my books in as succinct way as possible, and I think a good way to describe Turtle Point is that it answers the question whether a good man can marry a bad past.
Mm-hmm.
The synopsis of the book is that it's set in Southwest Florida on the Barrier Islands, and as a young man, the hero, Benny Dupree, has a girlfriend who is a marine biologist, and she is in love with sea turtles. And during their association, one evening they're out and discover people poaching the turtles. Benny leaves her for a while. She can't overcome her desire to be able to stop them, and when he comes back, he sees them burying her, and in a fit of anger, he picks up an axe that's laying there and kills them both and buries them. And that is his secret. For 30 years, he buys the property and does everything that he can to keep that secret. And
Right.
that is and part of the plot is the tension that's caused between his desire to keep a secret and a very evil man's desire to be able to uncover a secret which is related to that. And the tension between those two desires creates a really suspenseful plot.
Interesting. So your book blurb says Turtle Point will captivate the mystery suspense reader who craves differences in characters, plot, or story resolution. So what are these differences?
Well, that comes a lot from some of my experience in the business world. I taught managing interpersonal relationships for quite a few years for a large multinational company. And as a result of that, I use a lot of the knowledge that I gained from that to develop character relationships in my novels.
Right.
And the two main characters in Turtle Point are Benny Dupree. Benny is a very expressive individual who's prone to make rash decisions and then have to live with the consequences. The other character in the novel is a retired Marine intelligence officer named Harper Sturgis, and she is a tough cookie. She takes no prisoners, and I think a really good way to be expressive is if I just read a paragraph or two from the book. And this is actually the point where they're meeting for the first time, and she's a lawyer, and she has decided to take his case. And that gives you the background for the conversation.
Okay.
I decided I'd take you already. This is her speaking. You feel I'm okay then? Benny tried a weak smile. Harper leaned toward him. I don't feel anyway. I know you're not a rectal aperture. You're not much on feelings, are you? Benny was trying to get some emotional response. None came. No, I'm not. You don't want feelings. They get in your way of making good decisions. Good decisions make me money. I'm a materialist. As far as feelings go, the only one I want is the one I get from a very strong, electrifying orgasm. Harper's face never varied. That gives you an idea of the conflict you have between two people trying to work together and how they feel.
Absolutely. Your book, The Bates Man, features wild child Chessie Partin, who has had enough of being branded a woman who never finishes what she starts. She stumbles across murder evidence implicating the local Bates man called Tormentor. She sets her jaw and enlists the help of her suspended policeman brother to solve the murder. So is Chessie based on someone you know or an amalgam of people?
You're very insightful. She is based on an amalgam, and not only female, but also male people. A lot of people that I've met have problems with trying to change who they are. And that's one of the most difficult things we have to do because we do what works for us. By the time we're 14, we've pretty well established how we're going to interact with other people. And in the book, you see her where she continues to go back to what has worked for her in the past and how difficult it becomes and how much she wants to change her image.
Right.
So when you have a situation like that, it really you have a wonderful opportunity to have her interface with other people, both people she's not known and people she's known, and to gauge her reactions.
Right, right. And the majority of your books are suspense and thrillers. However, you've also written a biography, Blue Water, Red Blood, about the events of the 1928 Okeechobee hurricane that struck Florida. Tell me about the book and what inspired you to write about the event.
A lot of my stuff, even though it is history and suspense, a very large percentage of it has to do with history because I'm in Santa Ana's camp about believing that if we don't know and study history, that we are going to live it again.
Right.
What gave me the impetus to write that book was one of my first jobs was to work in the plant where those machines were manufactured. So I knew a lot of information that was not readily available to the public.
What machines are you talking about? Sorry.
Okay, the LBT is the vehicle the Marines landed in the Pacific, and actually that's what the story is about. In 1928, there was a horrible hurricane that killed 2,500 people.
Wow.
On the shore of Okeechobee, and most of them died of injuries 6 to 10 miles out in the swamp because the water washed them there, and about 800 died outright in the flood. The rest of them died of exposure and starvation because nobody could get to them. And a man by the name of Roebling, whose grandfather built the Brooklyn Bridge, actually developed a piece of equipment that would go out and rescue them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was never really used for that, but when the Second World War came around, the Marines needed to have a landing craft that could be used in the Pacific. And in fact, General Montgomery used them to cross several rivers and imported them for the British Army, and they were used in Europe as well.
Oh, so it sounds like a very interesting book. So there's history and there's a story behind it as well. So
yes, actually, the reason why it's classed as a story is the fact that I use dialogue. My publisher at that time, and I had a lot of discussions as to whether or not it should be a nonfiction or a fictional book. I didn't feel that I could portray the characters involved in.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Oh, you seem to have frozen again.
Yeah, I needed to.
Go on, carry on.
Okay, I needed to get. There are back. We're back.
Yeah.
I needed to get some dialogue in there to try to be able to portray his character more accurately.
Right.
So that's what it is. But the story is 99% fiction. And in fact, in the preface, I actually go through and I indicate what parts are fiction and talk about the 95% that's not.
Oh, right. You're obviously a pretty prolific writer. There's also a coming-of-age novel, Bully Route Home, and the story here focuses on the effects of racism on a small town in a time where hatred ran rampant. It's a story of tolerance and an uncensored look at the negative aspect of the human species. Is this written from experience, either first or second hand?
Partly, yes. The part about taking a daily beating at the hands of an older boy, yes. And what I did was take other parts of the story that transpired at the same time, within the same era, and put them together in a single story. The book itself covers the whole psyche of a young boy that is faced with bullying and coping with racial intolerance that he can't understand. From my personal standpoint, the way I escaped the beating that I got each day, and I was one of the better athletes, but I was 11 at the time, and the boy that met me each afternoon was 16. And back in those days, there was no social promotion, so he was in my classroom every day.
Sure.
But the, what I did was I literally found a way to go home, and at that time, the South was segregated, and I found a way to get home by going through the black quarters, and it's that part of the story is autobiographical.
Right. You believe readers should expect writers to be committed to a credo. After all, the readers are investing cash in the books. What can readers depend on when they purchase one of your novels?
Yeah, just a quick add to that. I
Sure.
believe that the most important thing that most authors don't uh, take in consideration is that the reader's time is equally important.
Absolutely.
And if you give a book to a person for free or for 99 cents, it's not a good investment in their time unless it's a good book. What I believe in is I believe that you must provide the author something that is food for their brain. I believe readers are thinkers, and I believe open minds, open books.
Yes.
Those are two of my catchphrases. And so what I try to do is I try to not insult my readers by making things too simplistic. And by the same token, I try to have some bit of learning knowledge. For example, on Blue Water, Red Blood, there's a lot of tidbits in there, like the fact that Don Roebling was the grandson of the man that built the Brooklyn Bridge, and the
Yeah.
fact that Blackjack Pershing was not named for his love for cards. He was named for the fact that he openly advocated for black soldiers being included in army units. So those are all things that you pick up that I try to put in there. And for example, to try to put some insights in the person's personality that make up history, Roebling was a person who was just absolutely put off by the wealth that his family had and his wife subsequently had. And when she would have parties, she would invite all her socialite friends, and he rebelled at going. And at one of the Christmas parties, she insisted that he come, and he said, "I don't want to be involved with all those stiffs."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Coming anyway." So when they opened the dining room, he had arranged with a local mortuary to have a corpse sit next to him and had a sheet over it. And when he came in, he removed the sheet and told her and the rest of her friends that since she was having her stiff friends, he felt much more comfortable being next to his. That's a real fact.
I love that. I love books that make me think, and it sounds like yours do. I don't want to. I don't want to just sit there and read something that sounds similar to me. I want to learn from a book. It's very
Well,
simple. I think you're right. Most readers do definitely.
readers are the salvation of our life. All great men, and I consider Winston Churchill one of the five greatest men that ever lived, and he was an avid reader.
I love your blog. Sandy says, "This is a canine look at life, both human and other inferior species." Tell me about Sandy. I think she could be a bit of a diva. Does she accompany you to many book signings? I think if she does, that's a bit of a cheat. I bet she draws crowds in. I've seen a picture of her, but tell the listeners about her.
Oh, she is a wonderful. She's a golden retriever, and she's a wonderful gal. Um, yes, my wife has often told me when we take her to book events that we should forget selling the book and start selling pets for Sandy. She is very very sweet. Not an aggressive bone in her body.
Mhm.
You've heard alpha dogs and beta dogs. She's a zeta dog. Um, and the people in the neighborhood call her the neighborhood greeter. So
Oh,
she is a diva. She expects that everybody will love her and to pay attention to her. So she really
absolutely. So, what made you, an extra question, why did you decide to write a blog on her behalf, as it were, in her voice?
because people sometimes can accept things from a third person, particularly a non-human item, that sometimes question whether or not we always use good judgment. One of the reasons I write so much fiction is that a lot of times things become preachy if you go nonfiction, or they're interpreted that way. I have
Hmm.
one thing. Uh, the reason why would be a good example. I have a book called The Cross on Cotton Creek, and I wrote it as fiction, even though I had a really strong motive to write it, and that is I believe as a society, as a human society, we have lost our commitment to our word.
Mm.
And so what I did was I concocted a set of circumstances where I gave value to two people who interact, and one gives their word to the other one, and what happens when him and his family keeps that word for 120 years.
Right, right. You're attending the Southwest Florida Writers Conference next April. What's all that about? Will you be taking center stage and giving a talk?
Um, Actually, I'm the chairman.
Ah,
And we're expecting to have 400 writers there. It's open to anyone.
yeah,
We invite you to come.
thank you.
It's still in the cold part of the winter. You can get a head start on your suntan here in Southwest Florida. We have 72 speakers in a day,
Mhm.
including Pulitzer Prize winners, that will be teaching courses. And yes, I'll be teaching a course on using human interaction factors to help create characters.
Fantastic. There are so many reasons for writers to write, from wanting recognition to seeing their name in a bookstore. What's your reason?
Um, I hope that I can entertain people, but I also hope that I can impart some knowledge in them that will save them from some of the mistakes I've made. I'm a very imperfect person, and the easy way is to not make the problem because you read about it. One of the things that I did was I coached American football,
All right.
and um, I had good success with helping kids get scholarships to major universities, and most of them were quarterbacks, which is one of the most important positions in American football.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons why they learned was I had them read every book written by quarterbacks like Bart Starr and Fran Tarkenton because they got to experience some of the problems and some of the issues that they would have to face in that position, but they could see the way other people had done it in the past. And those 5 people all got Division I scholarships, which is the highest level of football in the country.
Right. That's how
So
you learn. You learn by example.
yes, I believe in reading, and as I said, I believe readers are thinkers, and that's
Mm,
I want to give them food for their hungry brains.
absolutely. So what's next for D.L. Havlin on the book front?
Well, I have 2 books that I'm in the process of finishing. One is finished and it's ready to go to. It's in editing now.
Mm,
It's ready to go to my publisher. It's called Clayton Chronicles: The Wild Wild East, and it's a Florida story from uh, right at the Revolutionary War up through the 1820s when Florida became a U.S. territory.
mm-hmm.
A lot of people forget, Claire, that Florida, the Florida territories and the Florida colonies were the only colony that didn't declare independence from Great Britain during the Revolutionary War. They
Oh,
stayed loyal to the crown.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story, and
Sure.
quite honestly, Florida after the Revolutionary War and when Spain regained control of it, it was one of the most violent places the world has ever seen. It made our Old West, the westerns that you see,
Mm-hmm.
Tombstone and so on, it made them look like a Quaker Sunday school picnic.
All right, well, thank you, DL. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club when you've published your next book. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire.
Sure.